Mikki Willis is an American filmmaker, entrepreneur, and director of the documentary Plandemic. He's the founder of a movie production company, Elevate Films, with the mission to utilize the power of the media in a positive way. In May, at the height of the pandemic, he published Plandemic and a 26-minute interview with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Overnight, the video went viral, and soon after was banned by technology platforms for questioning the mainstream narrative. In his new movie, Plandemic Indoctrination, Mikki explores the meticulous work of Dr. David E. Martin. Plandemic 2 Indoctrination tracks a 3-decade-long money trail that leads directly to the key players behind the COVID-19 pandemic. Plandemic 2 connects the dots between all forms of media, the medical industry, politics, and the financial industry to unmask the major conflicts of interests with the decision makers that are currently managing this crisis.
My systems flagged anomalies when I started seeing nonprofits and corporates and cover financing for coronavirus programs in the late summer and fall of 2019. Our first red flag came out when we read the World at Risk scenario. Now, there's an organization called the Global Monitoring Preparedness Board. This organization is a part of the World Health Organization, and this board includes Dr. Elias from the Gates Foundation and Anthony Fauci from NIAID. These two individuals, plus the director of the Center for Disease Control in China, come out with a recommendation that says that by September 2020, 2 global pandemic preparedness exercises have to be completed. And one of them has to be done on the release of a respiratory pathogen. That then gave rise to an October event, Event 201.
On behalf of our partners in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
So welcome, Mikki. I'm so glad to have you here on Truth Warrior. It's an honor to have you. I just want to say right off the bat, a big congratulations for this epic film. I gotta give you 5 stars out of 5 stars or 10 stars out of 5 stars, whatever we can give you. You guys deserve an award. I thoroughly enjoyed the film for many reasons. I've been tracking this whole story since the beginning of the lockdown, and I've been researching these subjects for quite some time. And when the first part of this film came out, which was centered around Dr. Judy Mikovits, And I saw how incredible the censorship campaign was right out of the gate, just how relentless it was in trying to get that interview and that whole piece off the internet. I realized right away that there's something way bigger going on here. If they want to silence someone of her caliber and not even give her an opportunity to defend herself, you have given her the opportunity to defend herself and have featured other experts in part 2. And of course, part 2 is now being actively censored as well. So we live in the age of censorship. It's very hard to have a public conversation about these very, very important issues. And when you came out with this part 2 and the music and the vibe and the level of research that you put into it, and even some of the subjects that I was personally surprised that you brought up, but I was so glad you did. I just want to give you nothing but a big salute. Hats off here from Canada, my friend, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your words.
Well, let's get started on the censorship thing. I mean, you're making documentary films in the age of censorship. It seems to actually, in a weird way, work against those that want to censor this information, because the more they try to clamp down on it, the more people want to see it. And so, you're asking your audience to download the film, post it everywhere they possibly can. There's backup channels. And then everybody's messaging me personally. They're saying, hey, the link you sent me is not working. And then I got to send them a different link. It's an incredible time, but I feel like it's still getting so much traction. Do you have just any idea of the number of where we're at in terms of views at this point?
Well, part 1 has been seen by well over 1 billion people at this point. We know that. Beyond that, it's really hard to track. In the beginning, when it was at its peak of virality, we had a lot of people sending us messages to let us know the amount of views that their own videos that they've uploaded and shared were receiving. A lot of people reaching out to us to complain that their video that had 20 million or 10 million views was just taken down. And for a lot of people, that's the first time they've ever shared anything that had that kind of traction. So it really kind of woke them up to the threat of censorship that we're now all experiencing. So the first one had well over 1 billion. This one is now in multi-millions. We'll never know the exact number, and that's only because the model that we created, which is really a people-powered distribution, we're allowing people to download it. So, for example, when we premiered on London Real, the first day of the premiere, it had 300,000 downloads. So that means just on that day 1, 300,000 people downloaded it themselves with the intention to share it themselves and to become the distributor. And so how many views each of those individuals, 300,000 downloads have generated, we'll never know. But it's over 20 million easy at this point. But we're just about to launch tomorrow, I believe is the day that we're about to launch the film in 11 different languages. So I expect more virality in different parts of the world.
Well, this is a subject that definitely touches people all over the world. I myself, my channel, the work that I've been doing, and I've been talking to other independent, online journalists and bloggers and YouTubers that have been saying that when they cover this subject, their channel is starting to explode, especially when they try to talk about the real information. And that's with, no doubt, shadow banning and all kinds of other censorship that's going on. So this is something people want to know about, and they're sick and tired of hearing the mainstream narrative, which has so many holes in it. There are so many things about it that are contradictory, and people are trying to think outside the box and really get a handle about what's going on. So many people are reaching out to me as well about, the effects of this lockdown and what this whole pandemic scenario has brought into their lives outside of just a fear of a virus. And so what you've done with this film and with this film series is really exemplary in that not only are you presenting, valid information where people can actually go and look at the sources themselves, but you're doing it in a creative way, high quality, which tracks way better with people than, say, somebody like me just running a 3-hour podcast, running through facts. I mean, it's just such a useful tool. Do you have, I guess, you must have so many people from all over. Do you have any experts that are coming at you now? Do you have doctors coming at you? Or is it mostly pro? Is it con? What kind of personal attacks or attacks on the film or the people in the film have you been experiencing?
Well, in terms of part 2, the full-length documentary that was just released a couple of days ago, that every aspect of that film, as we were making it, was scrutinized by dozens of people, dozens of high-level experts. So dozens of professional researchers, scientists, Nobel laureates, investigators, attorneys, and even mainstream journalists that we allowed to take a peek at early drafts at the script stage and then at the rough cut stage. And we wanted to give everyone the chance to poke holes in it. And that's what I would ask of them. I'm not asking for compliments or ratings or anything like that. Just tell me, is there anything in here that can be proven wrong beyond the shadow of a doubt? And if so, do it. And so what we have out there is bulletproof. They're trying, but if you look really closely at the false information labels that they've smacked on the latest pandemic indoctrination, you'll see that if you read the fine print, they're actually saying that we are borrowing a critique, a fact check from part one. And so they're just, because of the name connection, they're debunking part two based upon part one, even though they're two distinctly different projects, only bearing the same name. And so these are one of the many games that they play to at least in some way try to validate their intention of putting a false information stamp on it. The other game that they play regularly is that they will, the first company to come out and do a smear campaign against this was PolitiFact. And it was quite interesting to anyone who was tracking the situation, because the film is an hour and 15 minutes long, and PolitiFact, from the moment the film came out, I think they had a debunk up an hour later, so they must have watched the film on fast speed. And then they, imagine watching it and having the time to actually research and dig into the information, the patents, the history. There was no time for them to do that. So they literally had stuff pre-written and ready to go, so that the moment we released the film, they could immediately tell people to ignore it. And this is how they work. But when you understand who pays these companies, who invests in them, when you understand that it's all big pharma associates, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you'll understand that they're actually serving their, they're serving their masters, really, the people who are paying them. So it has nothing to do with facts or information or trying to save the public from false information. It has to do with protecting an agenda that was set forth by very, very wealthy people.
That's very well put. And I really, really loved the part of the film where you actually go into the PolitiFact, the fact-checking sites, the Snopes. I myself have done stuff on that for a while, just noticing that people that I knew who were doctors or dentists or chiropractors or whatever, who were posting information throughout this, that was valid information. That might even be posting a study from the CDC, and they're getting flagged with this fact checker graffiti. If you go to Brian Rose's Instagram right now, he could literally just post a picture on Instagram with like one word on it, and it's flagged as, oh, this is false information. So it's unbelievable. What was that?
That's happening to us. My producer literally just said, I posted a thumbnail, just a photo of indoctrination, and they said false information. So apparently our artwork is even conspiracy theory. So I don't know. They're desperate at this point, which is actually a really wonderful thing. To see them making such stupid moves out there only informs us that they're incredibly desperate and they're grasping, and that's a good sign.
I'm glad you see that too. I feel it as well. I just see the desperation. And the more they try to move in this very draconian-like way to silence, and again, we're not silencing people that are saying, we need to take up arms and start a violent revolution, just like, some organizations that are saying that they're not censoring. They're silencing parents and people that have children, and filmmakers and artists and doctors and Nobel laureates. They're silencing the people that people should be listening to. And all you did was put them in a film and have them give a voice in context and lead people through stages. Maybe we could talk a bit about the stages of the film, because I found the overall powerful effect. I've watched the film a bunch of times. I've sent it to friends of mine who were like hardcore, this is all a big plan or pandemic, we better wear the masks and all that. And they're just like, oh my goodness. There's an effect that happens when you lay out the information in a certain way. And I was really impressed with that. So you had a little opening about Dr. Judy Mikovits, and in a minute, I'd like to have you talk a bit more about her. And then you're featuring David E. Martin, who is a character I didn't know. I hadn't heard about him before, but now he's known. He's featured prominently in the film. And then you go through all the history of the Event 201, which is something people need to know about, that this whole thing actually was planned. There's actually a legitimate or a legitimate event where they planned it, and other things as well. Sorry, what was that?
Not according to Bill Gates.
Well, of course.
He literally said after they sponsored that event, a simulation event where they scripted it and rehearsed at the upcoming pandemic, he literally came out on television and said, "We've never rehearsed this. We've never scripted it. We've never simulated it." It's just unbelievable that they feel so in control of the media that they're willing to tell a lie that we can prove with another video that just happened. It's amazing that they lie bold-faced to the public that way.
But he's good at it because he goes on screen wearing these Mr. Rogers sweaters that make him look warm and cozy and easy to talk to. And you're definitely going to trust a guy like that, right? I mean, this is the guy that donated half of his fortune to save the world, right? And you do a whole section on Bill Gates in there. I think it's about half an hour on its own, just taking the real picture of him and that organization, the funding, the events. But back to this thing about the flow, so I love how right off the gate, you open it up and it's right into this is what's going on with Event 201. And then it moves through the different cycles. How did that go in the background with your producers and your team in terms of plotting out, okay, how are we going to piece this together? Because you have so much information, and I know you're going to make more films, and looking at the links, and just so people know, you can go to plandemicseries.com and you can actually download the rabbit hole links of all the research and the backgrounds, which is amazing that you did that. But you have so many pieces of this big puzzle of information. Somebody that's researching this myself, and I produce content, I sometimes struggle with just how to organize it so that it makes sense to people. So I don't just sound like a crazy person going, "It's a planned thing. We did this." So what was the stages like of plotting out the actual way the film was going to come out in all those parts?
It was really an organic process, really. The film that we set out to make is not the film that we ended up making. We had interviewed 30 doctors, and we almost made the grave mistake of trying to correct all of the hot button topics that are happening out there. And it wasn't until I was halfway into it that I realized, and I was kind of keeping a watchful eye on the trend of the world and the trends of the world, and realizing that no one's going to win the mask argument right now. It's people are too fired up about it, and there's too much data on both sides that each side can walk away feeling that they're right and the other side is wrong. So no one's going to win that battle. And so it became clear. We actually had even edited major sections, about hydroxychloroquine, about mask, about social distancing, about all of that. And we scrapped all of them because it became clear that in part one, the trick that the media and the fact checkers play is and people are so wired into, being fooled by these tricks that we don't even see it anymore in front of us. And that is the thing they don't want you to look at, just like a magician, right? A magician does a lot of dazzling with this hand while this hand is doing the trick, over here out of sight. And that's a lot of what the media is in place for. That's why I always call them political spin machines. They spin things. And so when something is out front that could actually do damage to someone that they're loyal to for some reason, then what they do is say, look over here instead of here. And I realized that in part one that they had debunked and smeared and brought out into the public everything except for the stuff that really matters. Like the corruption pervading our global health care organizations, the wrongful and fraudulent use of patents, the fact that our global health organizations own patents. That conflict of interest in itself, we have to realize the repercussions of that. It means that this organization that would normally be charged to cover our well-being and find us the quickest, best, most tangible cures to whatever illnesses we're dealing with, can't do that because they have too much invested in patents such that they will bury a medicine like hydroxychloroquine to wait for their patentable drug that they can then profit billions of dollars on. And this in itself is what really creates the environment of corruption within our, medical institutions. And so, I just decided after seeing all of that, I just said, you know what? We're not going to talk about any of that. Let the world fight about that. Let them use that over there. We're going to talk about everything that they're avoiding. There's a reason they're avoiding it. And we're going to expose that reason. And we're going to show you how they avoid it, how they get you to avoid it, and how they get the people to turn against people like Dr. Mikovits and myself and you and other people that are out there risking it all to tell the truth. We are somehow deemed the bad, the dangerous, when the big pharma, billionaire executives are out there killing people daily, addicting people daily. And we have the public literally fighting for these people. It's inverted. It's wacky.
It is. Wow.
And it needs to be fixed.
I've got personal experience and a personal stake in this. My mother, she was brought into this whole health system thing, 38 years ago. And it was started with just a basic diagnosis that went to another diagnosis that led to a surgery that led to 16 other surgeries, countless minor surgeries, every drug known to man. Oh, that drug, oh, that's not working. Try this one. Literally, it got to a point where I would go with her. I remember as a kid, we'd go to the doctor's office. We'd sit there with the expert. They would spend 5 minutes with her, and they'd have a stack of files on her sitting on the desk. And all those files really were just all the other drugs and all the other surgeries and procedures that she had gone through. And it became very obvious to me that she was being used as a lab rat, as an experimental person, which so many of us are, and which I think that when it comes down to this whole vaccination thing and the pharmaceutical agenda, it is an experiment. And so I've seen it. And, sadly, my mother passed away early on in this pandemic situation. She had heart failure. It wasn't anything to do with the virus. But I often wonder, was it something to do with the medications? Was it something to do with a contraindication with the medications? And so it was her that motivated me to dedicate as much time as I have to researching this field of health and covering the subjects like this. So when I saw the way you put this film together and this whole project and started watching the interviews with Dr. Judy Mikovits and having her come out from the inside talking about a lot of this stuff, it really just validated a lot of the independent research that I did. And so many other of my friends that also do this kind of work, they felt the same way. So in that sense, I just, again, it's a personal stake of gratitude for the work that you guys are doing. I support you fully. I've uploaded the video to my channel as long as they'll keep it up to see if we can get it out far and wide. And I think that the stories of the people involved are also important, because what they do with the fact checking and the debunking is they take people and they try to attack their character. They try to attack your character. They try to attack Dr. Mikovitz's character or David Martin's character or anybody else you put in there, instead of dealing with the actual information, dealing with the facts, dealing with the arguments. I just wanted to maybe ask you a bit about that. You've known Dr. Judy Mikovits for a number of years now, correct? Did you tell a little bit about that story of how you met her? Was it meeting her and her story that inspired you to do part one and even start this series, or were there other things involved?
Absolutely. And first thing I want to say is I'm really sorry about your mother. We have that in common. What started my journey into all of this was actually 30 years ago. My mother and brother both died of bad medical treatments in the same month.
Oh my God. Wow.
And so, we've all experienced some kind of loss that way, or some kind of trauma that way. And so it's time that we stand up as the people to say no more. I had known Dr. Judy for 2 years before we filmed that first interview. I heard her story. I know people who have known her for decades, and not one person that I've ever talked to that has known Judy says anything other than she is the most honest and courageous woman they've ever met. And I agree with that. And if you get to know her, it infuriates me the way that she's been treated in the media, because even if 100%, think about, part one, let's just say, and it's not the case, but let's just say that some of her information, her opinion about some of the vaccine information or whatever she said, let's say that if she made 20 claims, let's say that she was wrong about 4 of them, which is a very, conservative or generous number, I should say, because at the very most that I've been able to find is 1 or 2 points where the science is just not settled. But none of the points can I say that she was wrong, and nor have any other doctors that I've interviewed been able to say she's flat out wrong. They've said she shouldn't speak in such certainty. Usually in science we don't speak in kind of certainty. It's all probabilities and possibilities, but that's been the main critique from other scientists, is just that she has a tendency to speak in absolutes, but I can't say she's wrong. And so, but let's just say that if she made 20 major claims, that 4 or 5 of them were inaccurate, that means 15 are accurate. And, let's say half of what she said was true and half was inaccurate. There's enough bombshell, alarming information in there that if we lived in an honest country with honest reporting, with honest journalists, with real journalists, with a citizenry that actually was able to critical think beyond the propaganda, to look at that and go, well, hold on a second. Here's a major smear, and yes, there's a doctor involved that helped Politico or whoever write this smear. First of all, who is that person? Oh, Paul Offit's? Oh, you mean the guy they call for-profit Offit?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, first know who that person is, beyond their credentials, so that you can understand that this guy has an invested stake in taking down someone like Judy, because all of his millions ride on the lie. So first of all, let's start there. And then, let's look at, well, what exactly did they say in their critique? And if they were only able to critique 4 points out of the 20 that she made, why isn't there more focus on the other 14 or 16 points? Why aren't we looking at that? Why isn't there a call for a real investigation to say, is this true that Anthony Fauci, somehow indirectly funneled $3.7 million to the Wuhan laboratory? The fact checkers say it's not true, but we can tell you it is. We have the money trail. And so isn't anyone interested to at least find out if that is true, and why they say it's not when we actually have the paper trail and the money trail? Is anyone interested in doing an investigation there? Because if this man is at the forefront of guiding all of our advice for what we do during this critical moment that affects our future and our health forever, we should know the man's history and track record, and to make sure that he's exactly the perfect person to be advising the nation and the world. We should also know who the hell runs the WHO. Why did they elect a guy who isn't a medical doctor, who was part of a known terrorist group and accused of covering up 3 other epidemics before he was assigned? And who assigned him? And then you understand that the Communist Party of China, the Bill Gates Foundation, and the Clinton Foundation are the ones who ushered that guy into his role. Why do you usher a known terrorist into a role to govern the World Health Organization? Isn't that a little bit suspicious? Do we not care enough to at least look at that a little bit deeper? These things go on and on and on, and no one seems to care because the media says not to. And it just is an example of how much we've all, including myself, we've all been manipulated and brainwashed to some degree.
Oh, I don't even know. Yeah, that's just so well put, because that's exactly where I came to independently in my own research, getting to the history of Tedros you're talking about there, and the World Health Organization, the connections. I've even gone back into even ancient history and pulling into the history of where did these organizations come from. I'm going to be producing some future content getting into the origin of what are now known as the Knights of Malta, who sit on the UN board as a nation of their own, by the way. Their charitable organizations, the Red Cross, the history of, they used to be called the Knights Hospitalers, which is very interesting, where you get the idea of a hospital, hospice. This is it's always flying the banner of charity and goodwill. And if you go to their website, or you go to the UN or the World Economic Forum or the World Health Organization or Bill Melinda Gates Foundation website, there's a lot of PR corporate language that makes it sound feel good. It makes it sound like it's on the up and up. But it takes somebody such as yourself, or a researcher that really wants to know the truth, to follow the money trails, to look at these handshakes that are going on behind the scenes between some very suspicious parties. And when you really come back, you go, oh, the entire world is being informed by known liars and criminals. That's where I'm at personally. That's what I believe, is that when you look at the track record of the people that are telling us the information, that is building the policies of the world right now, no matter where you live in the world, it's coming from very few sources, and those are very questionable sources, as you say. And when
That's
I had
right.
this conversation with somebody recently, they were saying, "Oh, Dave, you're just going to the conspiracy stuff. You know, it would take millions and millions of doctors and experts and politicians and bankers and everything to be all in on this big, giant, dark, smoky room conspiracy." I'm like, no, it wouldn't. Did it take that for you to do what you're told when the media told you that there's some kind of airborne virus that's going to kill you, that you got to give up your business, you got to give up your natural human contact, you got to keep your children locked away and putting masks on and you did what you were told. Don't you think that these health organizations are going to do what they're told? And then I started explaining the idea of a compartmentalized structure, and that's how it works, isn't it? Where it's something
That's
like
right.
the military, where you've got few people sort of managing the whole thing, and then it filters down, and you've got all these little compartments. And then by the time it reaches, say in Canada, Dr. Tam, who's our health official that has some interesting ties to China, et cetera, when they come out and say stuff, they're not coming up with it. They're reading a script that was given to them. So it's actually pretty easy for some of these big organizations that have all the money and influence in the world to not only sway public opinion through the media, but also even convince the doctors, the experts that are out there telling us what to do, how to operate in this pandemic scenario. And those people are going to work off their own good intentions. A lot of the doctors out there, they mean well, they're doing what they're trained to do, but even they don't think about how compartmentalized it is and who's really giving the marching orders, right?
That's right. First of all, I just want to really commend you for you're clearly incredibly educated in these realms, and it's just so nice to be interviewed by somebody who has such a great depth of knowledge about how all this is going. So,
Oh, thank you.
thank you.
I'm passionate just like you, Mikki.
Yeah, it really that's one of the things that we knew was a hurdle to get over, was there was a part of the film I actually had to cut out. But it was the part where we did our best to explain that. The question I asked of David Martin, who's just a brilliant, incredible, he's just an incredible human being. The more I
Where'd
get
you
to know him,
find
the
him?
more I love
But yeah, sorry, finish the question. But I'm curious where you found this guy. He's amazing.
a lot of people found little YouTube videos he made and said, you have to have this guy in your next release. And I flew him out, interviewed him, and I said, not only is he one of the people, he is probably the person in the next release. And I'm glad we made that choice, because he definitely is worthy of carrying the movie. But one of the questions I asked him was, the people need to understand, they have a hard time understanding how we can get other nations, other doctors, and hundreds of thousands of people to participate in this. It seems unbelievable and impossible. And he has a beautiful talk, a little bit made it into the movie, about incremental steps and how it works. But if you there've been a lot of examples that we just tend to forget. If you just pick one, pick big tobacco. There's a perfect example of a time in the 50s when the entire collective consciousness believed, for good reason, because they were told to believe, that cigarette smoking was healthy for you. And on every carton and poster, there was a picture of a doctor with a stethoscope and a pack of cigarettes, writing a prescription with a cigarette in their hand. And it was used for weight loss for women. And that even was marketed towards children, because, hey, if it's good for you, why should we exclude the children? And everyone believed that. And that when you understand Bernays and who's the creator of the world of PR, and how he went out to target women because not enough women were smoking, and he made it a thing of liberation and women's rights and suffrage movement, and suddenly got all the women to smoke. It was all marketing, until suddenly you had all the stars, the classic celebrities smoking on camera. It was a big thing. The James Dean, Lucille Ball, all these people always had cigarettes in their mouth because it became a status symbol. Now here's a device that can kill you, and not only kill you, but to kill the people around you. And it was somehow made, the narrative was that it was healthy, right? And so there was a tipping point, when we went from the people that started to discover how unhealthy it was, and literally had the science to say, look what it's doing to the lungs, people are dying. It's clearly connected to tobacco use, to nicotine, what's happening there. we're in that period right now because there were a lot of people that were fighting for their cigarettes then, saying it can't be true. Too many doctors. It's impossible that all of these top doctors, top celebrities, John Wayne, all these people we trust, that they would be telling us something that's not true. How could that be? It just happened 60 years ago.
Right.
It's the same thing we're going through now, where we're going, it's just impossible. Why would all these doctors and people? It's all marketing. And they've bought into it, and they're waking up from it. And that's the good news, is we're about to reach that tipping point where everyone goes, oh, okay, vaccines are not properly tested. Therefore, we can't call them safe. Therefore, they should not be mandated to be used on every man, woman, and child across the world until we can make them safer. Simple. No one's trying to stop them. No one's trying to shut down medicine. No one's anti-vax. We're just super clear that because of the corrupt system, drug manufacturers are incentivized not to properly test. They have zero liability. They're indemnified liability, so that if you get hurt on their vaccine, you sue, and the taxpayers pay for their damages. So if you have no liability, no accountability for your product, you're going to cut every corner possible to increase profits. And one of those major corners that they cut is clinical trials and testing. Simple. It's real. It's there. It's fact. And if the common person with a little bit of common sense cannot see the problem in that very system, such that they are fighting for big pharma, then all it shows really exemplifies the depth to which we've all been hypnotized.
It's so incredible. It's a massive campaign that's been going on for a long time, even since before Bernays. You even exposed Operation Mockingbird and all of that. I'm just working on actually a little documentary series with Adam Riva from Dauntless Dialogue about that. Many others have come out. This has even started to come out more in the mainstream shows as well, on History Channel and stuff, where they talk about how intelligence agencies, and they focus on the US, but we know this happens all over the place, have actually been involved in campaigns to, basically hire and find and bring on board all these different journalists, people that ran education boards. They started funding these university programs and groups like activist groups, and also laying down the groundwork for misinformation or disinformation campaigns that wouldn't suit, say, whatever the agenda would be. So when you find out that even your media, when everybody looks at the corrupt media, it's good to look at it, but realize where the origins of that goes. And that's another thing you bring up in the film, is that there are layers to that entire web of disinformation, and it keeps leading back to the same people, organizations, and institutions. And it takes a long time for the average person to independently verify all this and do all this research. I mean, Mikki, most people, they just want to go to work, come home. They don't want to be bothered. They just want to have their family, have their life. Most people are good people. The only problem is, if we're not paying attention to these types of issues, and now it starts to come to all of our doorsteps. It affects all of our lives. This isn't something that's just happening in China or happening in the Middle East or happening somewhere else where we can go, oh, that's totally screwed up, but I'm back to my normal life. Now this is affecting all of us. And so now there's a war, and people are put into a position of choice. They can choose to listen to the mainstream narrative, which is, as we said, it's been boiled down and handed down by some very, very scrupulous agencies and people. Or you can go on a journey of discovery, give yourself an education second to none by informing yourself. And films like yours are powerful tools for that. And I really wanted to ask you too about the decision to include all the research links and sources. To me, that shows the integrity. If the mainstream media and all these fact checkers and all these people that want to attack you and Dr. Mikovits and all these people, if they would actually go and supply the reams and reams of source material and facts and information that just completely destroys it, would be a different conversation. But they don't do that. They spin it, ad hominem attacks, all these things. Whereas what you guys are doing, and all these other doctors that have been coming out all over the world over these past few months, are saying, here's all the research papers, here's all the documentation. You can go look at it for yourself. When was the last time the mainstream media did that?
Never. And don't hold your breath for them to start doing that. because that's one of the games they play, which is why we put it all in the movie, in real time as it came up, because we realized, the same could have been done for part one. And I made the error because not having any idea under, the level of which power the microscope would be held to us for every word that was said. I would have put it in there too, because we could have done the same in part one, but I learned my lesson there, that they think the public is so dumb that they can literally say that patent they just said doesn't even exist. That, there a lot of that said in part one. That study that they referred to saying, that if you've had your flu shot, you're more likely to have coronavirus. That was debunked, or that study proved the exact opposite of what they said. Knowing that no citizen's going to find the study and read it. I mean, I've read the study 3 times now, and they're tough to read. You have to read them with a doctor in your presence. And so no one's going to do that. And so they just trust that they'll take them at their word, which unfortunately is what the public does. So we decided we're not going to give them that wiggle room this time. As it comes up, we're going to show the proof right in front of them, arrest records, whatever it might be, personal information. The John Oliver, the way he took his little hit piece out on us and lied. I could have gone deeper and further there, because he lied about 8 different points in his little, attempted takedown of Plandemic. And I called him out on 2 or 3 points, but when you see that even these, and it's hard for people because, we need a relief in our life sometimes, or we work all day, 10-hour days, and we just want to come home. We want to tune in to John Oliver, and we want to laugh, and we want to like him, and we thank him because now suddenly in the midst of a crazy serious world, he's bringing a little levity to us. And then you get a guy like me saying, well, that guy's a liar. And so they turn their hatred on me because they don't want to think that this guy that brings them some kind of, emotional relief could in any way be, part of the problem. And he is, and so are the rest of them. And what people don't realize is, in the same way that CNN is pure entertainment, and none of those people are journalists, they're all paid actors that literally have gone so far deep into their commitment, and they have massive mortgages on multi-million-dollar homes and all of that they can't get out themselves now because they've sold their souls, basically. These late night talk show hosts are the same thing. They are either, and I don't think all of them are completely in on it and know the truth, but when you exist in a bubble, which is what I did forever as a far left activist and on the road with, political candidates and all of that, I was stuck in a bubble thinking that, I was on the good side, and that everything they said, I said must be true. I didn't until, 5 years ago really start to question it all. After I was on the road with Bernie Sanders was actually the thing that had me go, wait a second here. I got really let down with Obama, first president I voted for, first one that I teared up when he was sworn in for. And then I started looking at the analytics of what he's created and what he did. A lot of the things that he did, legalizing propaganda against the American people, on surveillance, all this stuff, so much of this really, really draconian stuff was activated and elevated during his presidency. And it shocked me because I was all in for that man. And then I came all in again for Bernie Sanders. And it was, 6 months later, after being on the road with him, I realized, wow, I'm a sucker. There's something going on here too. And now that I'm on the road and I've interviewed all of his staff and all the people who are hanging around and all the delegates, I understand there's something not authentic here either, something dangerous, a lot of pandering going on, a lot of hatred for our country, a lot of fake oppression conversations, people claiming oppression and all this when they drive $80,000 Lexuses, and it's like, and have never experienced true oppression. And that started to really get to me, where I realized it's like, this is politics, man. It's like, it's not good, and it's really doing something to the psyche of our people, of our planet, and I can't support it anymore. And so I just came off the road. I actually went back on the road with a candidate, Tulsi Gabbard, and I will say I don't agree with all of her politics, and she knows it, and that's why I love her, because we have long conversations. We had one a few weeks back. very straight hour-and-a-half conversation on the phone where I'm able to tell her the truth, and she listens. I know her. I know her family. She's a beautiful human being, and so is her family.
I've heard that.
And so, but that was a great example for me to see that side of it, for me to go, where I think Bernie knows some of the damage he's doing. And that upset me because I loved the man. And I came off the tour going, he knows that what he just said is damaging, and he actually knows it's not true. So I lost respect for him. With Tulsi, whatever she said that I didn't agree with, I can only chalk it up to her not having the proper resources to gain the proper information. And so I started to help her and her sister with that, who was kind of, managing her social media and all that, saying, check with me before you tweet that stuff, because that thing about the fire happening in Brazil and the lungs of the world and what's happening in Bolivia, all that is false. You're getting sucked into a false narrative there. And so we started working in a way, so I still love her. I still believe in her. But her, like so many other politics, they get stuck in the system.
Right.
And that's one that I trust will come out of it because she's got integrity.
I've heard that about Tulsi. And I mean, there's so much on the political spectrum, to dissect, because it's all part of this, right? But so this is part of your story then, Mikki, and this is what I wanted to ask you. I wasn't sure if I was going to start with it or close with it, but I think it's powerful that people know a little bit about yourself and where you come from and where you're coming from with this film project. To do something like this is a Herculean effort. I can't even say the word. It's a huge effort for you to do this, to go against and risk your reputation and put your name on the line, possibly even put your life on the line. We've heard lots of stories. And, to do this work, it must have been something that really, really motivated you. You mentioned earlier that you had a few of your family members that were victims to the medical system. And that's a strong motivator, obviously, in this department. But what was it that you've been making film and doing this work for a while in other areas? What was it that told you that you needed to start with Dr. Mikovits and go down this path? Was it activated even more so at the beginning of the lockdown, that you just sort of noticed some things? You were probably already researching a lot of this stuff, and then there's some connections made. Maybe you can fill people in on your story of creating Plandemic.
Well, if I go back even further, to tell a little bit more of I was in New York when the World Trade Center was attacked in 2001, and I did search and rescue and body recovery for 3 days. That experience was a massive wake-up call for me. And I came out of that and by the time I was allowed to come back to California, which is where I was born and raised, I changed everything in my life. I put everything I had in storage. I left Hollywood. I had a very successful career as a music video director. And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do commercials and sell products that I didn't believe in. I couldn't degrade women in music videos anymore. Just something snapped in me where I realized that all of that was making me money, but it was doing nothing for my planet and for my people. And so I that's all I wanted to do from that point on. And I actually really thought that I was out of a job because I didn't see any offering in Hollywood that would allow me to fulfill that purpose. And so I left for a year and a half, went and lived on a friend's guest house on a vineyard. And I was hired to write a sequel to a Hollywood classic movie. And so that afforded me a year and a half of just kind of chilling out and reinventing myself and deciding what I want to do. And even, whether or not I want to come back into the game of filmmaking at all, because it just seemed like, there just wasn't room for a guy like me in this sport. And so I came back in and ended up, was inspired by an event that I attended and created a global film competition where we challenged filmmakers all over the world to find out and to expose what's right with their area of the world. Show us the heroes, show us the good news, show us the solutions, show us the cutting edge technologies. And we created something called the Elevate Film Festival that really blew up. It became the world's largest single screen event. I think it still is. We would have, up to 6,000 people per screen. And it was quite a phenomenal experience. A lot of celebrities got involved. A lot of people got involved because they saw it as kind of returning to their original intent, the thing that called them into being a performer or an entertainer, so that they could move people, so that they could do something that mattered. And that's what I heard over and over and over from all of these people, regardless if they were, newcomers or seasoned. We had some very seasoned professionals that were part of this event. And so that was the moment when I saw that there's an audience for this. And we morphed that film festival into a film company and started to make our own videos and focusing on, in the beginning, it was very, it was focusing on food, on yoga, on meditation, all the things that we thought people needed to know more about to lead a healthier, more productive life. And that gradually, once I realized that there's a deeper agenda going on here in our country and the world that kind of renders all the yoga and meditation useless unless we deal with this stuff too, then I started to become more political, which is something I've avoided most of my life. And I started to get more interested in politics because I realized that, what good is yoga and meditation if we're all, held in quarantine or forbidden to even have healthy foods and what have you. I mean, it all helps, but, we really have to fight for our civil liberties and our ability, free speech, and the foundation of the things that allow us to learn from each other. And the more I started to look into these realms of beyond medicine, but, big tech and all the ways that our lives are being controlled and manipulated, it just became clear to me that, and then I had kids. And that was really the turning point for me, because I realized, I have another 50 years on this planet. I could live it out and just go get a farm someplace and be fine and hope the best for the rest of humanity for all eternity. But after I had kids, it changed that story for me. I realized that that they're not going to have quite the childhood and future that I so fortunately had if we don't do something about this stuff now. And so most of what I do, if not all of it, is with the thought and intentions of making a better world for my children. And that's what most people I work with, they're involved. I'm working with a lot of people who have vaccine-injured children. And you have never met a more fierce warrior than a mother or father who has a vaccine-injured child. And they're the people who I really respect because, they don't care about the risk. They don't care what kind of power they're going up against. It doesn't matter. Somebody has harmed their baby. And that fierce, intrinsic, primal thing that comes out in people when something like that has happened, I'm in absolute admiration for. And those are the people that give me strength. And so I'm fighting for and with those people as well. Because it's just a shame. It's a shame that so many parents can say, I have 2 children. I've had parents say I have twins or triplets. One of them was busy, so I took one of the triplets or 2 of the triplets in for shots. Both of them now have this ailment, and the one that didn't go doesn't. How many times do we need to hear that until we go, well, that's suspicious. We should look at that.
Exactly.
No, I don't want you to look at it. And so I think it's a real shame. I can't imagine being a parent of a vaccine-injured child and having the world curse at you, saying that you're the harmful one because you're fighting against harmful vaccines. It's just one of the most callous, cruel, insensitive things that I've ever seen humanity partake in. And I hope that ends fast.
That's so powerful, man. And I just, hats off to you. You're speaking, it really resonates with me as well. And to have people like yourself have that wake up, you probably had numerous dark nights of the soul, so to speak, over this, sleepless nights, you research it, you find out what the truth is, and you realize there's something I've been trying to think about lately, which is that if we don't face the truth about any of these issues, the truth gets worse over time. Like, I was recently doing some shows talking about human trafficking and the problem in Hollywood and some of these elements, which, you touched briefly on the Epstein-Gates connection, which we can talk about another time. But there are many of these pressing issues that affect children. The vaccine issue, the medication issue, the child pediatric cancer issue, the diabetes issue, so many things that I've experienced and watched as well. And I've got 2 children of my own, so I've got skin in the game. And it is something that when you look at the reality of the world, of what the truth is now, because we ignored it in the past, it just keeps building up. It doesn't go anywhere. Now we are forced to face it. We have to face it. All the cards are on the table. We have to look at this and we have to be honest. And we have to ask ourselves what really matters in life. And I think we're also being forced to ask that other question: what does it mean to be human? Especially when they're talking about not just injecting your kids with some coronavirus vaccine, but they're all the quantum dot technology, the digital IDs, ID 2020, the surveillance state, the biometrics, the working between Google and China for the social credit scores. It's the worst nightmares of people like Solzhenitsyn and all these people that have tried to warn us about this type of mentality. And here it is. So there's no greater time than now for people to do that gut check, look their children in the eyes and say, what kind of world do I want to leave for you? And I mean, I'm at the point where I'm talking to friends and they're saying to me, how could you even think about having kids? Anybody that's thinking about having kids in this horrible world, they're insane. And part of me gets it because I'm like, yeah, it's a scary time to be a parent with all these issues and the complexities of the world. But we need more white blood cells in this world. We need parents that are raising strong, healthy, independent, freedom-loving human beings that are going to make an impact in this world. And so we can't be afraid of that. We can't say, let's stop reproducing because it's got so bad. The globalists would love nothing better. So the fact that you're like, no, I'm going to get on this. I'm going to do what I can. And that's all I've been trying to do. And I try to tell people, look, we can't save the whole world, but look what you've done. One man, and then you get a team of people and you connect with other amazing people, all these doctors, these experts. Look at the power that has. Over 1 billion views of a documentary that can wake up the world. I do the work I can. People write books. So we all have to look into ourselves and say, what kind of world do we want? Do we want to live in the new normal that they're creating for us? Is this normal? Or do we want to live in a beautiful, abundant world? And I guess that brings us to the closing of the film, which I'm not going to spoil for people. But what I've watched it a few times, and every single time I get goosebumps and a tear comes to my eye because I'm just like, yes, this is some warrior stuff. This is empowering. This is the message people need to know. It's not all scary doom and gloom information, is it? If we can nail this and we can expose this and we can get this out there, there is so many positive things that we could do in this world. We have all the ingredients in our disposal. So maybe wrap it up here, Mikki, with some positive insight that you've had doing this project and that powerful closing message that you included in the film.
Yeah, well, that message has been really interesting, and I knew it would be because I was pressured by a lot of people to create a call to action at the end of the film, and I didn't know why in the beginning. I was very reluctant to do it, and I tried several times, and finally I wrote something that I was happy with, and I recorded my voiceover. I started to put it in the film, and I watched it, and I just went, "What is going on here? I don't know why I'm reluctant to have this in the film." And then it hit me. I said, oh, because it conflicts with what I really want to cause out there. I don't want people to follow my instructions. I don't want them to listen to me. I'm not a guru. I'm not a leader in that way. I want people to listen to themselves. And if I tell them what to do, that's how we've been wired. We've been wired to like, okay, motivational talk. Everyone, let's get everyone pepped up. And then now let me tell you where to go and how to sign up and what to buy. I don't want to do any of that. I have no merchandise. I have nothing to sell. We don't even turn our ads on our videos online. No ads. Just let it all be for free. And I realized I want people to feel discombobulated. And that's why I put at the end of the film the definition of plan and the definition of nd3mic. Plan is obvious, a detailed description of something that you plan to do. nd3mic is Greek for people. So what is the plan of the people? And I just thought that's my call to action, because I've had a couple people say, I was really frustrated because I thought, the next thing was going to happen is you were going to, tell us what's next. What do we do? And I said, good, feel that feeling, because that feeling is you not relying on yourself. That feeling is the feeling we get when we forgot that we have all the answers. But if you look at the history of the hero's journey, of the mythologies that have been told through all of the iconic stories that we all remember, our favorite movies, there's always some version of the reluctant hero learning that the force is within. We are the one, you know? And at what point are we going to go, oh, they're talking to me? You know, the Hopis say, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And so I didn't want to give them a call to action. I didn't want to tell them what to do. I want to empower them to remember that they have the answer. I want them to give me the answer. I want to hear what the plan of the people is, because we have relied for so long on other people to author our lives, to tell us what our plans and our future is, that it's time that we take control of that and start to guide our own future. And I want every man, woman, and child to be empowered to know that it's time to stop following the leader and to be the leader in our own lives. And that it's in all of us. It's not in some of us. It's not in the select few. It's not in the celebrities. It's not in the athletes. It's in all of us. And that is a healthy organism, when every cell of the organism knows that it is a vital part of bringing life to that organism. And without it, the organism is sick. And right now, our organism is sick. And we can bring it back into health incredibly fast by all of us just waking up to who and what we are and why we came here.
Wow. I would give you a round of applause for that, man. That was amazing. This is exactly what, and I love that you brought up the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, the whole thing like that. That to me speaks so many volumes. And we've been taught, like you said, to externalize our power and basically give our power away. When we don't have the right to speak our minds freely, that means we don't have the right to our minds. That means somebody can patent that and own it and control it. And when you talk about mind control, that's like one of those conspiracy theory terms. Oh, we're getting this tinfoil hat out. We're talking about mind control. It's like, well, hold on a minute. Think about this. If you don't have the ability to control your own mind, that means somebody else is going to come in and control it for you, because there's all these forces out there that are trying to direct us and guide us and shape our opinions and give us our opinions and who we should vote for, what products we should buy. And now you're coming with this message, which is something I've been trying to echo in my work, and many other great people out there are doing it, which is no, this whole civilization, this experiment with freedom was built on the concept of the individual. And that does not mean it's about some narcissistic jerk that's just trying to stamp on everybody to get their way. This is about the idea that only when you have, as you said, every cell is healthy. It's like those white blood cells, those immune cells everybody's talking about. It works in the body politic as well. And if we can have empowered individuals that are free to go on the exploration of life, that are free to make mistakes. So let's say you're right with the original comment with Dr. Mikovits, where maybe she said a couple things that we haven't been able to validate just yet, but then all the other things are true. I mean, that's normal. That's the process of looking at it. I'm sure you're doing the film. You went through and went, you know what, we're not going to cut that. Maybe we made that mistake here. Let's correct it this time. And you'll keep making it better. You're given the freedom to do that, which is what's making that genius come out, which is what's making that creative force come out of you and that potential. So, I mean, if we can have this message get out to as many people, which is why I love this film and I'm so happy it got such a response, it's not trying to drag people into a new form of tyranny, of the tyranny of the masses or the collectivization of people. It's about recognizing how diverse we are, how unique we are, how we all have those talents, and we can win this. The only reason we've been stuck in the mud for so long and these people are getting away with literally murder is because we've been giving our power away our whole lives. We don't know what it is to be free. We don't know what it is to be powerful. So we need those reminders. And sometimes you need to be put up against the wall. You need challenge. This is the challenge of our time that hopefully can help shake us out of that. So I definitely salute you for that. If you had any more comments on it, please do it. I want to respect your time, Mikki. This has been great. I also wanted to ask you about what you have planned coming up. What's your pandemic moving forward with your film series? I know you want to do multiple films. Are you able to give us any hints about maybe where the direction might be headed?
Yeah, the next film is it's been something I've been developing since 2006, and it's something that I call medicinal media. It's going to be very interactive, and as we go, in the same way with pandemic indoctrination that we showed all the research as we went, this time we're going to kind of hold up a mirror to the audience as new discoveries are being revealed so that we can actually see the way that our brains are processing the information they're receiving. And we can learn literally the system that creates the way that we think these days. Because what I've learned is that all of the propaganda has wired our minds in such a way that we literally can't see facts when they're right in front of us. And if you understand how hypnotists work and illusionists work, these people know how to have an entire audience not see something. And so our minds have been wired to not see what they don't want us to see. And so we're going to create a film that's going to literally break people free from that matrix. And we're going to use the hot button subjects of race, of climate change, of George Soros, a lot of the stuff that people need to know about as the laboratory for all of this stuff to happen. And I've been wanting to do this for a number of years, as I said, since 2006. And so now we're going to move into that. And so I'm just starting to lay the groundworks for moving into that and contacting some people about it. And we're also looking at the exploration of how we use vibrational technologies, because as I'm sure you're fully aware of, there's a lot of things that can happen with certain frequencies of vibration to actually affect the body in a positive way. And we've experimented with this in 2008 on one of our film festivals at an audience of 6,000, and it was incredibly effective. And so we're looking at, like, how does media become medicine? How does it become medicinal in that it can not only free the mind, but also create some kind of balance and coming back to wholeness in the body. And so we're just exploring this. And I'm talking with a lot of scientists and people that have been at the forefront of these discoveries. And I have no idea how much of it will end up in the next film, but I'm hoping a lot of it, because I really think that we'll be able to pioneer a new experience that will have films be that much more impactful. That we've all had experiences. If we've had those transcendental, transformative experiences, sometimes where it's just dance, music, or something happens. My wife, who's not a real, she doesn't cry often. She was at a show one time and a violin hit a note and she just burst into tears. And she was kind of embarrassed because she was just like, oh my God, like, what? I'm crying. What happened? And she didn't know, but it's just, she hit a note and the whole audience went, and I don't know even what the heck it was, honestly, to this day, but it had me go, wow, whatever that was, I want more of that. And I want to learn how to do that, because if we can use that in a positive, powerful way to where we understand that everything that's coming at us through the multi-dimensional form of media, which includes everything, the screens that we look at, and everything, sound and frame rate technology and color and music and language and poetry, all these things come through these mediums. How do we use them in such a way that would impact us, so that it's not just about getting more data? Because I also am at a point where I'm like, how much more data do we need to store up here on these little hard drives? I think we need to get into an experiential discovery more, because there's something I've had the experience several times in my life where just the experience of something, climbing a mountain, jumping out of an airplane, is a religious experience. You hit the ground and you're like, I'm a changed person. I don't even know why, but I can't think the same anymore because of that physical experience. And so I want to create something that has more transformational value through the experiential forum that is cinema. Long answer to your short question, but that's what's up.
Amazing. Amazing. That is, can you imagine a world of media that was more like that? You was using like cymatics and the resonance principles and the understanding of the different frequencies. I mean, there's even the story of Adolf Hitler or Goebbels, I can't remember which one it was in there, that he got to switch the frequency of the orchestras down to a different level, like a different hertz, so that it would have a more numbing effect as opposed to an awakening effect. And you can see it in art. You can see some art, like today's art is just crap. I mean, what is it? Just like sunglasses on a table? What is that? Like, it's not art. It's not coming from from that internal creative place. If we could create media like this instead of a propaganda machine that's lying to you and is working on behalf of all these horribly toxic and corrupt industries, we have the potential to change that dynamic. If the potential exists, if you can conceive of it, and I can understand what you're saying, and people listening can understand it, that means it's possible. We don't have to listen. We don't have to live in the Anderson Cooper world anymore. We can live in the real world. You know, it's like in the Matrix, you know, welcome to the real world. It's kind of shit right now, but we can fix it, you know? So this is the way forward, man, is changing the frequency. We've heard that a lot. And this expansion of consciousness, or this waking up moment, a lot of people believe it has to do with the timing of where we're situated right now, you know, astrologically, or however you want to look at it. There's many ways to look at it, but I feel like people are waking up just because they're curious about the information that you're talking about. And so much more. And so much is coming from all these angles. We're getting information pouring out about Hollywood and the media and the wars and 9/11. And people are waking up to all these subjects, as well as this whole virus. And even though it's centered around this dark material and this scary information, there's actually an opposite effect that I find happens, because people are finally given the truth. And when we can get the truth, then we can go, all right, now that I know for sure that the world was created like a matrix-like structure for me, and it doesn't have to be that way. Now we can get to solving the problems. So we're going to need more films. We're going to need more of this kind of work, and I salute you for doing it.
Thank you. I'd love to speak into what you just said. That was some great stuff. And
Sure.
so how I see it is that you mentioned frequency. And so I would encourage the people that are listening to this interview right now to be very protective of the frequencies that you tune into. Because there's something that happens called entrainment. And whether this is true or not, I don't know, but there have been a lot of myths or testimony that people who have worked in shops that have a lot of clocks in them, particularly a lot of grandfather clocks and all of that eventually the clocks will entrain themselves to each other. So the pendulums start to swing together and all of that. So there's this natural tendency for all of matter to actually entrain itself. And so it's important for us to keep in mind that the frequencies that we tune into will eventually, we will entrain to those, which means we will tune to those frequencies. So the more we watch CNN and MSNBC and all these outlets, the more we will tune into their frequency, which is their frequency is inauthenticity, their frequency is manipulation, their frequency is fear, their frequency is control. We will be susceptible to that frequency. Tuning in to the frequency of truth is what I recommend. And truth doesn't always feel good. So just to piggyback off of what you just said, I know a lot of people in the spiritual communities, because I was part of it for a long time, that will constantly just tune into what feels good. They follow their bliss.
Yes.
And that can be very dangerous, because it can lead us into a place of pure disinformation, because we just keep following what feels good. And the truth doesn't always feel good, but it resonates with us. And eventually it does start to feel good. So just to validate what you just said, there's a point once we are awakened enough to what's really happening, that every time we find something that's true, even if it's bad news and something we didn't want to see, it resonates in the body as truth. And that's when we start to understand that age-old statement of the truth shall set us free. Something liberates us inside. I feel freer now than I've ever felt in my life. People keep contacting me. Are you okay, man? Are you okay? You must be going through a lot right now. And it's like, man, I'm doing amazing right now. You know, the liberation that comes with being truthful, with not hiding anymore, with simply being in service to truth, no matter what side it plays on, is what we need to do. So tune in with that. Sometimes it feels terrible, but ultimately it will bring you to a place of liberation. So, and your body can feel it every time. If you're still enough, if you're willing to listen to it, your body will tell you what's true and what's not true. And just keep moving with that energy and let your body entrain and tune itself to that energy until suddenly what happens all around your field, because we are energy producing, machines, is you start to then create truth in your field. People start to become honest with you. They become honest with themselves. They start to entrain themselves to what you're putting out there. And because the human spirit is in such dire need of truth right now, they will be attracted to your truth. And then there's those who will be threatened by your truth, and they will attack you hard. Let them attack, let them go away. They will come around later. Let them go, even if they're good friends. Let them go. It's okay. You're not in service to friendship, you're in service to truth. And whoever is in service to that same mission will be there with you. And they'll be there with you in an authentic way, in a way that allows you to be yourself and say what you want to say without the fear of losing shallow friends. All of life becomes better.
It's magic what you're talking about. And I can tell you, to those that are listening, everything you're talking about, I've experienced it, and I know dozens of people that experience it as well. And it is so important. And this is why we have to have courage. Courage and truth go together, peanut butter and jam. You need courage. Right. And when you have that courage is coming from that knowing inside of you with that frequency connection that you're bringing up. And that is so important, because there's a lot of people, I'm sure you see this too, who they're like, I love the film. I love the movie. I'm totally with you, but I'm really scared to share with my friends. I'm really scared to talk about it. And I'm like, well, but what do you naturally feel? Like, forget all the fear of what other people think. We've been raised to think like that, herd animals, but we're more than herd animals. Okay. What do you feel? Did you like the film? Do you want to share it? Do you want to share this information? And then when they say, well, I really would like to, then I go, well, what's holding you back? The fear of what other people think? You don't even know what they think. Half the time when I talk to people in a big setting of people, they'll say one thing. And then as the party dies down and we're sitting, chilling, maybe having a beer by the fire later or something, and you're one-on-one, and like, yeah, you know what? That kind of does make sense that there's some other stuff going on. And you're like, okay, everybody already kind of knows this is the water cooler conversation we need to have around the planet. And if we can tap into our courage and that personal power, even though that this seems like a really tough time, all the more reason to do what you're talking about and really dive into that. And I love that you're taking the film in that direction, because there's tons of like data points that you could just go on and endlessly with documentaries about, which would be valuable, but we got to bring this to the next level. And this is what I'm trying to do. And you're inspiring me too, to really inject more of that into the work that I do, that creativity and the real message of the solution that lies within each and every one of us. So, I mean, bravo, man. Beautiful. This is amazing.
Thank you. Beautifully said. This has been nice. I really appreciate it.
Oh, very good. Well, I got to let you go. You've been very generous with your time. I just want to thank you and your team for what you're doing. I'm a big supporter, and if there's anything I can do, you let me know. Those that have been listening to this interview, you have to go check out this film. I'm not afraid to tell you. Go to plandemicseries.com, and you can get the video there. It's being uploaded all over the place, so follow the track and try to get this film, download it so you have a hard copy. And then also, I have to recommend, go to the other interviews that you have there with people like Dr. Mikovits, the follow-up, letting her respond to her rebuttals and her critiques. That's so important. And then you also have all the links and the sources going down the rabbit hole, which I recommend everybody get, so that you can inform yourself instead of having your mind formed for you. So Mikki Willis, plandemicseries.com. Thank you, brother. I wish you all the best, and I hope this isn't our last conversation.
Thank you. My love to Canada.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, brother.